What the heck was going on with our religious leaders? First, Bishop T.D. Jakes stepped aside. Then David and Tamala Mann talked about their mental problems. Now, Bishop J. Drew Sheard was in the middle of a storm that was getting worse. A lot of rumors, leaked messages, and serious but quiet charges were spread on the internet. And just when everyone thought things would slow down, the unexpected happened. No one could say anything after his own daughter broke the silence. You'll be shocked at how deep this went. Bishop Sheard was not just another leader in the church, he was the leader of Koich, which is one of the world's largest Pentecostal groups. People looked up to him and saw him as a strong man of God. Bishop Sheard was a great example of leadership and family unity. His wife, Karen Clark Sheard, was very strong, and their family history was deep in gospel music and service. However, something changed. People would have seen it if they had been paying close attention. There were already signs. It all began with some strange online posts. Some were not named. Some of them were general thoughts on church blogs. There were then tweets with lots of unknown words and short, shaky videos from inside church events. It became clear that something was not right in the background. Now, though, things start to get interesting. A lot of fans thought it was all just rumors, but others saw a trend right away. T.D. Jake moves back, the man drops his voice, and Bishop Sheard starts to appear less and less in public places. Early that year, he had missed a few big events that he generally led with all his might, and people began to wonder why. Then there were leaks. Audio clips and texts began to spread quickly on social media one by one. They weren't 100% sure, but the tone was very serious. There have been rumors of pressure to keep things quiet, and differences among the church's top leaders. Some pastors have even been told they need to keep quiet to protect Koich's reputation. The crazy part was still to come, though. The Sheard family didn't say anything until a black Instagram story showed up on Kierra Sheard's account one quiet Sunday evening. There was only a black screen with white text that said, "Sometimes silence isn't strength, sometimes it's survival." There are no names, tags, or anything else, but that one sentence set off a firestorm in online gospel places. So let me tell you something, this wasn't just another strange message. It was from the daughter of the bishop, who had always been known for her grace, poise, and loyalty. It was clear to everyone who she was talking about. This is what the internet said in response. All of a sudden, Kierra was all the rage. Gospel fans started going back and reading her new song lyrics, and TikTok users started breaking down old interviews and live performances. What was different about this story? Not only people from the outside were guessing, someone inside, the daughter of the bishop, was giving hints that something wasn't right. She didn't have to name them. It was enough for her to be quiet. A few days later, Kierra did a live QA with a group of Christian women. She stopped when someone asked her about how open the church's leaders were, not just for a second or two, but for a very long time. It was clear on her face. She wasn't sure if she should speak or stay quiet again. After that, she said something that changed the whole conversation. Our age is sick of acting like they're not real and doing everything perfectly. I'm not just talking about friends, I'm also talking about leaders, people we love and people we looked up to as kids. There are private talks going on. We need to say those things out loud, even if it costs us everything. The web went down at that time. It wasn't like her words were just general advice. They made me feel close. The way she held her body, the pain behind her eyes, and the weight and hate. That's when the story really began to come together. The gospel world stopped moving after Kierra's quiet but powerful word. No longer were people just talking. They were listening and watching, putting together pieces that had been missed before. The Sheards were not like any other religious family. They had royal status. And the whole country feels it when the king or queen starts to shake. What she said may not have seemed important to some, but to people who have known this family for years at church, it was a big deal. The scary part comes next. Kierra didn't take it back, say sorry, or say she wasn't guilty. She didn't say anything at all. Instead, there was more of a wall between her and the world she used to be proud to stand in front of, though, this time. Things were not better inside Koich. Whisper began again just a few weeks after her post and video. However, these were not from outside sources. They were coming from inside. Some pastors had been in their jobs for decades before they suddenly quit or stepped away from their tasks without giving a reason, saying goodbye, or giving a statement. Now, let me tell you something strange. No one or two people were in charge. It felt like a wave, and it wasn't said. Now things start to get interesting. A lot of the people who left had been critical of how the church handled internal issues behind closed doors for years. There were some of them who were upset about how some issues from the past had been ignored. For example, money problems, claims of mental abuse, or people being shut down when they tried to speak out. People couldn't help but wonder if the church was putting its image ahead of the truth, even though none of these claims were made public. Was honesty less important than leaving a legacy? After that, a bigger picture began to take shape. An old email thread that was said to have come from a known church elder got out online. Based on the email, the church is no longer running as a body but as a brand. That line hit me hard. It was quoted on blogs, social media sites, and YouTube movies, among other places. It wasn't an attack. It felt like being honest, one that had been there for too long under the water. Even scarier was the fact that no one in the leadership said anything about it. They didn't say for sure, but they also didn't say no. That silence said a lot. Kodak isn't just a church, it's a movement around the world. It has a lot of spiritual, cultural, and even political power because it has more than 6 million followers. It makes everything Bishop Sheard does even better when he is in charge. When Bishop Charles E. Blake died, Sheard took over one of the most important pulpits in the history of the Black church. This change seemed easy from the outside, but it wasn't so easy on the inside. People who are close to the church's leaders said that tensions were rising between the old guard and the new speakers. The older bishops wanted to keep things the same. Younger leaders wanted things to change, honesty, taking responsibility, and healing. It was Bishop who felt like he was stuck in the middle, trying to keep everything together even though it was all falling apart below. Here's the most crazy part. Around the time Kierra finally spoke out, those same sources say there were private meetings of top church members going on. And people who work at the church said that something called loyalty pacts were being made. The leaders of these groups made unofficial deals to look out for each other, protect their names at all costs, and keep quiet no matter what came to light. We're no longer just talking about a family matter, if that's true. It's a system based on fear, secret, and controlling how people look. Who do you think got caught in the middle? Hi, Kierra. Insiders say that after what she said in public, some high-level church leaders talked to her secretly. Few say she was kindly asked to E. She didn't, though. Instead, she stopped being seen on big platforms again. No new interviews or long posts. It's all been pretty quiet. It didn't feel like shame, though. It felt like power. Because people began to understand this. Being that close to the power center means that the person is telling stories because they have seen too much to say it out loud. They don't go quiet because they're scared. They do it because they don't want to talk. It's time for the truth to catch up with the lies. In spite of Kierra's quiet, her words continued to have a bigger effect on people. The word was already out there, even though she never said anything directly to her dad. A lot of people started listening to old family interviews, sermons, and even panel talks again. Now everything was being looked at very closely. It wasn't just one family, you see. Inside the modern Black church, it was becoming clear that something much bigger was going on. And fate took a turn it didn't expect when the problems involving Bishop J. Drew Sheard started to connect with those involving Bishop T.D. Jakes and David and Tamala Mann. This stopped feeling like random chaos all of a sudden. It seemed to fit together. In the beginning of that year, when Bishop T.D. Jakes said he was stepping down from active ministry, a lot of people thought it was just a time to rest. That was what the message said in public. But something else was going on behind the scenes. No one missed a beat on social media. Former members of the Potter's House hinted at quiet departures, money problems, and stress inside the house. There were a lot of ideas on TikTok. Tweets with strange language started to show up, and people started talking about the man in ways that made them feel uneasy. The Mann family then came. People had always thought of David and Tamala as the perfect pair for the gospel because they were loving, loyal, and happy. But all of a sudden, Tamala started sharing sad videos of her praying. David quit going to important events. There were rumors that health problems and family problems were getting worse. Some said it was about them. Others said that the people close to them were breaking up. It made things worse in either case. People started to wonder what was going on with our leaders. That's when everything made sense. What if there weren't so many scandals? What if this was the start of a bigger problem that had been hidden for years under acronyms, suits, and Sunday sermons? Now things start to get interesting. When it came to Bishop Jakes, the men, and Bishop Sheard, all three cases were very similar. Changes in public appearance, moods, and silences that can't be explained. Public figures speaking in words or not at all. You won't believe how many people started to look further. Lines of time were drawn in blog posts. People on YouTube made films that show how people's faces, voices, and even bodies changed during old interviews. Even though it wasn't proof, what they found made people think that something wasn't right. It felt like a dam was breaking when Kierra's words were added to the mix. This is what a well-known gospel writer said. People have been on stages, but we never gave them safe places to fall apart. That line really hit home because these leaders, these strong religious men and women, were people. They had to be perfect because millions of people were watching and expecting them to do well. Even though they were quiet when the stress got too much, it didn't help them. The rumors got stronger because of it. People in the church began to ask more difficult questions. Some people felt hurt while others were sad. But what is the most usual feeling? Not clear, not just misunderstanding about the leaders, but also about the way things work. Why didn't anyone answer what Kierra said? Why did so many preachers leave without saying a word? Why were young believers like Kierra ready to speak? There was only silence. And the quiet itself seemed like an answer. It was clear that Bishop Sheard and the other leaders of the Kojic spoke volumes without saying a word. As the days turned into weeks, the silence started to hurt more than just the Sheard family. It started to affect everyone in the church community who was watching. People who went to churches connected to Kojic started slowly leaving. It wasn't because they lost faith in God, but because they were questioning the politics, systems, and performances they used to trust without question. The quiet made things worse because it broke trust. The gap had grown so wide that you won't believe it. Some older church leaders were still concerned with keeping traditions alive and saving names, but younger people, especially millennials and Gen Z, were sick of pretending. They were done with polished public appearances and practiced lectures. They needed the truth. They wanted to get better. Most of all, they wanted things to be clear. It was full of comments like, "We love this church as kids, but we're not going to love a lie anymore." Thousands of people shared that sentence over and over again on different channels, who were sick of seeing their religious leaders fall silent. Kierra Sheard was right in the middle of it all. It didn't matter if she meant to start a fire when she spoke out, even if it was just in a quiet way. Some people thought she was brave, while others thought she was rude, but no one could ignore her. For a group that had been into science for too long, she became the voice they didn't expect. This story was different because she didn't use big words or emotional language. They were careful and thought out, but they were also very passionate. That's what made people pay attention. She didn't make fun of her dad. She didn't yell to get your attention. She only told D the truth, which many people were afraid to say. The crazy thing was that Kierra wasn't the only one who had something to say. Others in the gospel music, prayer, and even quiet church groups started telling their stories all over the country. Some said they were pushed to the side because they didn't agree with the leadership. Some people said they were told to hide family problems for the church's sake. Not against the church itself, but against the system that had kept people quiet for too long. A movement was taking shape. It was no longer just about Bishop Sheard. This was about every church that put image over health, every preacher who ignored pain to keep power, and every generation that was taught to be quiet instead of speaking the truth. Things had really gone in a different direction than planned, and this change could mean the end of the Black church as we know it. People were talking about different things in the church world. People could finally talk in group chats, Sunday school, and family get-togethers. They had more difficult inquiries, things like, why are our leaders crying in silence? Why does telling the truth seem like betrayal? Most importantly, how can we make the church a place where people want to heal instead of hide? Bishop Sheard, on the other hand, was under more pressure than he had ever been under in his decades of service. Even though he hadn't said anything about the issue in public yet, a lot of people thought that his silence was part of the problem. Some people wanted him to say something. Some people thought it was too late, but one thing was for sure, things could not go back to how they were. Kierra may have quieted down again, but her voice had already done its job. The moment she opened the door and pulled back the curtain, a discussion began that could not be stopped. It's possible that she didn't may. Ian to become a symbol of revolt, but of change. A picture of every son and daughter who sat in the pews and watched the chaos, asking when the truth would come out. The real question is now like a